What's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. And man, the year is just going along. A lot of stuff is happening in the gaming industry. And with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X set to launch this holiday, a lot of Nintendo fans and just gamers in general have been saying, okay, where does this leave the Nintendo Switch and what is Nintendo's future plans? This is actually something that I get asked pretty much every single day on my live streams. So make sure you check out my OJ live streams whenever you can. Make sure you subscribe and hit those notifications so you know when we go live. But this is something that gets asked so much, so I wanted to do a formal video on it. So is Nintendo in trouble with the upcoming PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X getting into the fray? And I'm going to say yes, and I'm also going to say no. Now I'm going to say yes, they're in trouble a little bit because obviously there's going to be a huge power difference. So people, a lot of gamers are going to want to see Nintendo do better. Heck, we've already been seeing with that. Even if a really good game drops, people will still complain about resolution or graphics or about this or that. So I think that there is a little bit of trouble there when it comes to what some gamers want. And a lot of gamers do want that extra power. They do want that extra oomph in their system. But a lot of those gamers already bought a Nintendo Switch. So does that really mean that Nintendo's in trouble per se? Most of the people that have already wanted a Nintendo Switch have bought one, and a lot of the sales that are going on right now are either the younger audience or maybe people that are just first getting their first system, or maybe just people that are buying it as a complementary system in addition to what they already have, like a PlayStation 4 Pro or an Xbox One or the upcoming systems. So that's why I say yes and no. There's going to be obviously some problems when it comes to third-party developers bringing over games. You're just not going to see it as much because guess what, guys? You don't see it that much right now at this point. When it comes to PS4 and Xbox One, that already is a challenge for a lot of them when the Switch is seen as something that's not in the main plans, despite the amazing sales of the Switch. So we already see that right now with the very few amount of games, and a lot of them, almost none of them date and date. There's only been a handful of games when it comes to PS4, Xbox One, because developers have been developing on these systems for a long time. Now, where does that put you as the consumer and Nintendo's future? We'll talk about the Switch 2 and all that, but to be honest, it really doesn't change up what Nintendo's going to do in the short term. And when I mean short term, I mean the next, let's say 2 years or so. It doesn't really change up much. Nintendo has a ton of development studios, a lot of development partners. They can work with guys like Koei Tecmo and Bandai Namco to bring out stuff like Fire Emblem, or to even get out stuff like Pokemon Snap, the new Pokemon Snap game that's coming out. That's Bandai Namco. They're still poking up their sleeve if they want to do that. There's a lot of various studios that Nintendo can reach out to get games on the system to continue pushing the momentum and to also continue getting games. Nintendo themselves have a ton of different studios, and all of those guys are working on games, right? All of them are working on games. Next Level is working on something. They're done with the DLC pretty much for Luigi's Mansion. Nintendo's EAD teams are working on stuff. We have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. Nintendo has whatever the Mario teams are working on. Obviously, the rumored thing is the Mario remasters. That's kind of going down right now. I mean, Nintendo has so many teams and so many people that's available to do games. I'm not really worried about Nintendo getting games, despite what people complain about online about this year or whatever the case is. Nintendo's still putting out a number of good games, quality releases out there for the Switch that's continuing to drive the momentum for the system. We've heard that Nintendo's stock hit a 10-year high or 11-year high since it's ever been. So more and more people are buying a Nintendo Switch at this point, now more so than ever. And if you look at it, Nintendo always has the price advantage with the Nintendo Switch Lite. No matter how powerful these systems are, they're not going to be $200. And the Nintendo Switch lets you play console quality games, console style games, anywhere that you want for $200 right out of the box. Everything is included in there. So that's actually a pretty good proposition. And if you look at it, it's very similar to what Nintendo kind of had with the Nintendo 3DS versus the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. Because that kind of crossed over generations from the 7th generation to the 8th generation. And that system held its own. It sold over 74 million units worldwide, despite not really getting anything, nowhere near as much Western support as the Nintendo Switch has seen, especially from 2K lately. So the fact that the Nintendo Switch is already encroaching on those numbers, is pretty much going to be in the 70 million range by the end of the year. Holiday hits, there's going to be 70 million plus Nintendo Switches out there, so that's pretty good for Nintendo overall. Now let's talk about what's going to be going down in the future and the Switch 2 and kind of where that goes, because I feel Nintendo's definitely going to look at what the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are doing in order to kind of shape their system to be a bit better for developers. People like to say that Nintendo kind of follows their own rules, and they do follow their own rules, but they do make exceptions here and there to make sure that they kind of adequate the developers a bit more. Nintendo always just kind of made whatever system they wanted to, and it didn't work out for them, right? It always worked out for them before, but it did not work out when it comes to the Nintendo 3DS to an extent. Not really, they still did really well, but Western developers just said, skip it, we don't want to develop for this platform. And for the Wii U, it didn't work out at all. So Nintendo took the developer feedback a lot more into mind and kind of included them a lot more when it came to Nintendo Switch, even listening to what Capcom had to say with the amount of RAM and putting more in there. They reached out to Bethesda to make sure, like, hey, what do you guys think about this system? We want to get some games on there, promotion, marketing, all of that stuff. So I think Nintendo's going to listen even more. The big thing now is the SSD tech, and the hard thing with this is that how is Nintendo going to make a Switch 2, a portable system that's going to have anywhere near the amount of power of an Xbox Series X or a PlayStation 5? How are they going to make that in the form factor of a portable? There's no way that you can have an SSD and all the stuff that they have in there in these big boxes that just sit on your entertainment system. And we mean big boxes. The PS5 is a huge box. How does Nintendo get that done? Well, I think that this is what they're going to do. They're going to kind of do a twofold program or twofold strategy here. But I'll be honest, man, after playing The Last of Us Part 2 on the PlayStation 4 Pro and seeing how beautiful and how great that game looks and how it runs and everything like that, honestly, Nintendo doesn't have to have a system that's right up there with the teraflop count, because they can't. If you want to do the Switch thing, you can't, because the battery life will be 35 seconds and it'll burn up in your hands at the same time. Kind of like how cell phones do when you play video games on a cell phone, or at least a video game that's a little bit more demanding than like the puzzle game or something like that. When you play like Fortnite, yeah, the cell phone turns on to fire and the battery life is pretty bad. And that's just Fortnite. Imagine other huge Nintendo type of games like a Legend of Zelda, for example. So Nintendo has to figure something out there, but to be honest, they don't have to go with the teraflop count. Looking at the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, those systems can probably handle a lot of these next-gen games if the developers wanted to make them for those systems. Obviously, the SSD tech is what the developers are banking on in terms of loading times and everything like that, but it's the law of diminishing returns that are factoring in here, because it's still 30 frames per second for Assassin's Creed, the new Assassin's Creed game that's coming out. And yes, it's 4K, it's going to look really good, but we've had 4K before, right? But 4K isn't something that's completely new. So the games are looking great, don't get me wrong. They're going to look great, they're going to run great, you're going to play and have fun, and there's a lot of cool features being added on. But to be honest, I think Nintendo can definitely get by with their next Switch system being around the level of a Xbox One X or a PlayStation 4 Pro. Now, I don't know how they're going to be able to do that when it comes to battery life, when it comes to performance, when it comes to price. That's going to be very difficult, but some of the ideas that I think that they could do is they can have the regular Switch system itself, and when it's undocked, it's about 3 teraflops or whatever the case is, and then when you dock it, they have a supplemental computing device which has been in patents, and that can boost the power up another whatever, if they develop some type of crazy tech for that to get done. And also with that, you can have an SSD in that supplemental computing device dock, right? You can have an SSD in there. You can plan all sorts of stuff with it, since it's going to be a stationary thing that does not move around like a portable system moves around. Yes, you'll be able to move the dock, but you guys know what I mean when it comes to the dock just being able to sit there, not being actually in your hands and holding it while you play. So I think that Nintendo can kind of do that. And if they get anywhere near where the Xbox One X is, in my opinion, with a more modern CPU than those systems have, because that's really the problem with the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Very powerful in terms of overall computing power, but the CPU is the problem with them in terms of what the developers think, at least, because they have all raved about how the CPUs in the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 are much, much better, because the teraflop count in terms of overall power isn't a drastic step up, right? We're going from 6 teraflops of the Xbox One X to 12 teraflops with the Xbox Series X. We're going from 4.2, somewhere in that range with the PS4 Pro, to 9 teraflops with the PS5, 9 teraflops, and I think there's like a boost mode or whatever the case is, but it's not a drastic, oh my gosh, big step up from what we saw in terms of overall computing, but the CPUs and the architecture are better for developers with the SSD. So if Nintendo can get around that range, but also putting in a better CPU, and of course maybe having an SSD in that supplemental computing device dock, and they can sell it like that. They can sell like, hey, if you want to just have like a regular dock, your regular dock that you already bought will work with the Switch and you're going to get this amount of power. But if you want to have a little bit of an upgrade here, you can get this new Nintendo Switch, the new Nintendo Switch. I bet you anything they're going to call it that, or Nintendo Switch 2, and you can plug that bad boy in and bam, you get your next gen games or whatever the case is. So that's my thought process, just looking at it from the outside looking in. I think that there's many different factors that Nintendo can go. I think that Nintendo's going to have a really cool custom chip with NVIDIA. They were kind of taking a big risk with the Nintendo Switch. They didn't know people were going to respond to it the way that they did. Obviously, they were caught off guard, but they really took that concept and ran with it, and I don't really see Nintendo dropping it. And to be honest, with cartridges and what they're doing with how Nintendo has it, I think that the real physical media, once they get that up to snuff too, I think that's going to be the superior way to play, because it won't take up space on your SSD, right? Only, I guess, if you want to download the game on there. But if the cartridge tech evolves, you can have an SSD and you can have cartridge tech that doesn't take up space. So I think that is dope. Once Nintendo gets the cartridge sizes higher, I think that's the right way to go, instead of everything taking up space no matter what, which is something that I honestly don't like about the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. And now with next generation coming, we're having that again. And those SSDs for extra memory are going to be expensive. They're not going to be cheap at all. So that's going to be another problem that people run into too, but we'll see about that. What are you guys' thoughts when it comes to this? I'd love to hear in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.